What's going on, you beauts? Welcome inside the TCA studio for a Tuesday afternoon edition of the podcast. A little out of the ordinary, but such is life sometimes. Hope you've all had a great week thus far. Recovered from that disappointment on Sunday and whatever some of you may have chosen to use to help cope with it a little bit. Back to regular sporting action here. Well, for most people anyway. We'll get into that in a second. Starting on Wednesday night. We are on social media at Tall Can Audio. Would love to hear from you about all of this stuff on any of your favorite platforms. And certainly subscribe to the pod wherever you're hearing us right now. All the usual business out of the way. I should also mention that on Wednesday afternoon, we'll talk to Dave Bedini, who, of course, has written several books on hockey and Canada's place in the world, kind of through the lens of hockey. Also well known as a member of the Rio Statics, but something of a hockey historian or a hockey observer. And I was interested to reach out to him kind of after that gold medal game. Obviously, the political stuff that we're all drowning in right now, but even going back to the Four Nations last year and the number of other times that this Canada-USA rivalry has played out and everything that goes into it. When exactly Canada-Russia turned to Canada-USA in terms of the rivalry we placed most hockey importance on, a bunch of different things. Just on sort of Canada's place in the international hockey order right now, or at least how we feel about it right now, how we view it right now. So look for that on Wednesday afternoon. Should be a really interesting conversation. Hope you'll join us for that. Look, I was sort of hesitated on whether or not to do this. I was going to do it yesterday, to be honest with you, but I couldn't get enough information. Nothing was trickling out. I have a bit of a beef with that as well that maybe we'll touch on here in a second. But this whole idea of members of Team USA going to the White House or the State of the Union instead of right back to their teams. Now, let me do my best to take the politics out of it, which I have to, because I find the politics disgusting. And frankly, I already tweeted something like this and got a quite reasonable reply. And I was tweeting through the context of what Auston Matthews was going to do while being both the captain of Team USA, but also the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And their season is hanging by a thread. He flew to Miami on Monday. Then there was talk that he, because of these, White House visits and whatever else, might not be available to the Leafs on Wednesday. I said it looks ridiculous to me that you can't find your way from Miami to Tampa in 48 hours to make yourself available for that game because you need to take a detour somewhere else. And there's a lot more that goes into it. It's being honored by your government, however you want to spin it. It's the State of the Union. It's celebrating with your team. It's whatever else. There's a lot of reasonable opinions on this. But the reply that I got said, yeah, I don't care celebrating with your teammates or whatever. If you're going to visit a pedophile, I've got no use for you as a human being. And I got no pushback on that. I don't have a strong you're being too hard on the guy kind of stance. I don't know if Donald Trump is a pedophile. I know he's protecting pedophiles. I know he's defending pedophiles. It's not better. What do you want me to say? He's a disgusting guy. But let me do my best to pull this out of the political realm and just talk about it on the hockey realm, the NHL versus the Olympic conversation, and your obligations here. Because somebody was going to win this tournament. I would have hoped it was us. It wasn't. But when Canada won in 2014 in Sochi and had a long-ass travel back, there was no pit stop in Ottawa. You get in what celebrations with your teammates you can while you're still there. Maybe a little bit on the plane. There's a couple of NHL charters. I don't know. I doubt everybody flew back with their same teams. It was more likely divvied up on where you were going across North America to get. So you didn't have this. There was no pit stop in Ottawa for a celebration. In 2010, I've heard several Team Canada players talk about how after they won in Vancouver, it was like a whirlwind. You had a couple hours with your family and friends and teammates, and then you were on a plane right back to the NHL. Now, that one was a little bit about you're in North America. You don't need a ton of time to get back to wherever you're going to go. I believe the NHL season started up again on the Tuesday night after a Sunday Olympics. And I know for sure that it did after 2006. And this is the one where people are trying to draw the parallels between. Perhaps because it was also in Italy. But what happened was Team Sweden wins it, and they decide, do we have time? Can we figure out a way to go to Stockholm from here for a quick celebration in, a public square there and, really enjoy this with with their countrymen? And I've read in Matt Sundin's book, he goes, it's probably not a great idea, but we're doing it. And off they went. Quick flight from Turin back to Stockholm. He tells a great story that their plane, when they crossed into Swedish airspace, was met by 2 fighter jets from the Swedish military to bring them home. Off the airport, on a bus to downtown, a couple 100,000 people, great party. And then again, like very much a whirlwind, on a plane back to North America, and he was in uniform for the Toronto Maple Leafs on Tuesday night. Was he likely at his best? Was he well rested? Was he well hydrated? Almost certainly not. But he did one of these little pit stops and made it work. And the point that people are trying to make, at least coming out of that in comparison, is not everybody did make it back to their team's first game. There was 4 members of the Red Wings, for sure, who didn't get there to join their team for the first game. And I blame a little bit the NHL. Now, Sweden had an obligation, in my opinion. The NHL owners have agreed we'll shut down the schedule for you to go and play for your countries at great risk to our own franchises. And then when it's over, you come back and you get to work. When we say the season starts again, the season starts again. Because there can't be an exception every time you do this. Somebody's going to win every time. And so we need to have a little bit of an understanding that the schedule is what it is. We have paused it for as long as we've paused it. We are letting you go, and we expect you to be back when we start again. Owners are already worried about this, and we saw why during this. Mikko Rantanen has come back injured. Kevin Fiala is done for the year. I don't know when Sidney Crosby is going to play again. Like, there are guys who have come back from this thing beat up. Connor McDavid, I heard, is not ready to rejoin his team. I don't know if he was playing hurt or if he needs to sulk a little. I don't know. I've been a little hard on McDavid. It's unfair. I got some angry feedback after the last show when I said that, when you picture the best players in the world, they all win stuff. Crosby would win. Lemieux would win. Gretzky would win. I'm not saying McDavid isn't a winner. I'm saying he hasn't won yet, and it's strange that he is clearly that guy in this generation, and so far hasn't been able to do it. Now, he needs an entire team to help him do it. He needs a management group to be, competent in putting together that team to help him do it. There's no judgment here. But we need to get to a point where we all understand that more and more generational players are going to go through their entire career and not win. When it was Lemieux or Gretzky or there's 6 teams in the league, there's 12 teams in the league, there's 21 teams in the league. Your averages of stumbling into a championship were just better. Now there's 32. So Crosby found a way to get it done, although that was still in a 30-team league, so slightly better odds. But we're going to see guys come through more and more often now where it just doesn't happen for them. And we're going to have to get by this, especially when you do the Hall of Fame conversation thing and the best players ever kind of thing. Well, never won anything. Well, that's going to be true, but it's going to have to carry less weight in these debates. Anyway, point being, it sounds like McDavid will not play in Edmonton's first game, at least according to 1 or 2 tweets from a couple of the beat reporters out there. So the owners are already a little perturbed about this, that their league is being shut down, that they're putting these assets at risk at the Olympics. As I mentioned, some names there that did get hurt and did damage to their own franchises. And now you're kind of rubbing their noses in it a little bit by saying, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can get back for Wednesday or not. I might want to go party a little longer with my boys here. I think that's a bad look for, it's USA this time. It was a bit of a bad look for Sweden in 2006. And here's where I do think there's a bit of a difference. The NHL has accommodated for this time. Not necessarily somebody's crazy ass party, but we are going to give one extra day. Like I said, after a bunch of these Olympics, the tournament ended on the Sunday, and the NHL started again Tuesday night. This time, it starts Wednesday night. So it is Team USA this time. They get to, on Sunday night, have the blowout of a lifetime. You are Olympic champions. You should do your best to not end up in a fairly humiliating video that goes international news. But, do what you got to do. Bunch of beers with the boys. Celebrate your gold medal with your families, with your friends. Awesome. You're on a charter. I believe it was meant to go to New York. Some inclement weather in New York redirected that flight to Miami. And you're there on Monday night. You know what? Have at it one more time. You're back on American soil. And Miami, not a bad place to do it. Hell, New York wouldn't have been a bad place to do it. One more blowout. A second party to really get into it back on home soil. Have at it, guys. No problem. We will forgive your absence at Tuesday practice, even though that was the signed time that, you would all be back with us. No problem. Once in a lifetime opportunity. Make your way back to wherever you need to be on Tuesday after this second party and play for your fucking team on Wednesday. That part shouldn't be complicated. That part shouldn't be negotiable. Forget where you're trying to go on Tuesday, what political thing you're being roped into or willingly going to. It's not part of the deal. You've been given an extra day, and you're sort of abusing it here, is my takeaway on this. And I get it. It goes a lot deeper than that. Politically speaking, just morality speaking, we can have all those debates, but I think we sort of get into some areas where it's a lot harder for people to agree there. But I think you were given that second night in Miami to have another blowout back on home soil, and now it's on you to get back to work. You're obligated to do that. Look no further than it is Toronto who's supposed to play in Tampa. Jake Gensel is going to be in the lineup. One of Tampa's assistant coaches announced on Tuesday that he'll be good to go on Wednesday night. If you are a Tampa fan and you have bought tickets, so Gensel didn't go to the event, I have no idea what's behind that. But if you're a Tampa fan and a proud American and you were cheering him on and you went and bought tickets for the little celebration and to do the thing that they're clearly going to do. Congratulations to Jake. And you find out Jake Gensel actually isn't in the lineup tonight because he's still pretty fucking hungover. And he decided he wanted to attend a State of the Union address to be part of a propaganda display. No good, man. You have now let down your franchise. You've let down your teammates who supported you to go. And now you're not there for them. Now, it sounds like, and this is one of the reasons I hesitated on doing this. I mentioned a few minutes ago, I couldn't get anybody to nail this down. I don't understand where all the big name reporters are right now. I assume they don't want to touch this thing for all the obvious reasons. But there was one tweet from Dreger, one tweet from CJ, nothing from Friedman. A couple of the other big guys, just Pierre LeBrun, I don't know where you are. I assume we were going to get and it would have been reasonable, honestly. It would have been reasonable. Well, I was traveling back and I was jet lagged and I was beat from covering the Olympics and stuff. Okay, it's all totally fine. You could have got away with that if you didn't all jump out of the cake the minute that Pittsburgh and Colorado made their Sam Girard, Brett Kulak trade. Oh, so you do have your phones. You are still talking to people. You are plugged in. You're able to communicate with us. You're just not touching this story. I see. Good job, boys. Well done. Come on. So you haven't been able to get any info. Are they going or are they not going? Are they going? There had been talk that it would be the State of the Union Tuesday night and then some sort of event on Wednesday morning at the White House. And if you're at an event at the White House Wednesday morning, none of these guys are playing Wednesday night. Now, some of them, I know the Kachucks, Brady and Matthew with the Panthers and the Sens don't have games until Thursday. So, I mean, that's workable. But if you have a game Wednesday night and you're still standing around in the White House on Wednesday morning, you're doing this wrong. And there's no way you're going to make it. So I'm waiting. I'm trying to get information. Is the Wednesday morning thing happening? Is the Tuesday night thing happening? And I don't want to come in here and do this show without some of that information and some of that context. And we had nothing on Monday. Like, we don't know if they're going at all, other than a couple slip-ups here and there and a couple of hints in people's Instagrams and stuff like that. So around 11 a.m., 11:30 a.m., there's a picture on Twitter of the guys boarding this military plane. Not all of them, but most of them. And people are doing the thing where you try and pick out who's there and who's not there. And then Dreger does an insider trading on TSN, or at least on the TSN website, and says he's now told there's a luncheon on Tuesday afternoon and that most of these guys will be ready to play Wednesday. The Leafs are expecting Austin Matthews to be back and play on Wednesday. So now you're like, okay, the Wednesday morning thing, I guess, has been canceled and replaced with the Tuesday afternoon thing. And then are they actually going to go and sit through this 2-hour State of the Union? Or will that have been their celebration and they'll all make their way back to their teams on Tuesday night? I don't know, man. Even in between teammates, like Kyle Connor was back in Winnipeg skating with his team at practice on Tuesday. Connor Hellebuck was not. He was part of the group still fucking around and I guess headed to Washington. So you can't even get any sort of clue as to which teams are flexing and saying, no, we need you back. Obviously, the Jets left it up to them. One guy decided I'm not going. The other guy decided I am. Who knows? Maybe Kyle Connor. Like, we saw that Brock Nelson is already back in Colorado, and it was just that he flew home with his family from Italy instead of going on the team charter. And so he was never involved in the Monday night thing in Miami and the White House thing and whatever. Maybe Kyle Connor did the same thing. I have no idea. But certainly different approaches to all this. And it's obviously exacerbated. The conversation gets even more impossible to decipher online because it is so hypercharged politically, right? People love this president and people absolutely despise this president. And so once it's about this White House, like, we didn't used to do this. Like, it's always a story. You guys will remember that Tim Thomas chose not to go to the White House with the Bruins after they won the Stanley Cup in 2011 because he didn't like Barack Obama or didn't like Democrats. Either way, it was a political thing. He didn't want to go. And it was a story, but it wasn't like this. It was not full of just... I don't remember anybody using the term pedophile during that debate. So this just becomes a shit show and you can't get anywhere. And I'm sure that's why these insiders and big reporters are choosing not to engage, despite the fact that it's a complete abdication of any sort of journalistic integrity. But it's just not worth it. So it sounds like most of these guys are... Anybody playing Thursday will be good to go. Anybody playing Wednesday, it's a bit more of a shit show. A kind of a wait and see. But the whole thing, it is a trophy case. A lot of Americans won gold medals over there, including the women's hockey team, which is a whole other story, and the disrespect, the elbow they took there on Sunday afternoon. But why isn't everybody else? I know the women's team was invited, I guess because Trump is afraid of getting impeached if he doesn't. They turned him down for apparently work and school reasons. Maybe that's why. But where's the rest of them? Where's the rest of the gold medalists? Why aren't they? They're not high profile enough. This is a State of the Union. This is a propaganda move. Why not wait and do what lots of other teams do when they win championships and want to have get-togethers and celebrate things, and do it over the summer. Well, because no one will care in the summer. This is hockey in the United States. Most people will have forgotten that it even happened. We have to jump on it now. We have to use it now. These guys are Team Trump, and they're here at the State of the Union. Look how great America is. I'm part of building that as this president. It's got to be done right now, or it doesn't matter. Has to be right now, or it's useless as propaganda. Now, some of these guys, I assume the minority of these guys, know that. Now, I'm a teammate. I'm part of this group. I do know some of them have this thing about a president from any party inviting you to the White House is an honor. Sort of have time for that with most presidents, not with this one. But there's also the hockey culture thing. I don't want to step out. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to rock the boat. And the majority of them have neither of those feelings. It's, holy fuck, let's go, yeah. Love MAGA, love Trump. It won't feel like being used as propaganda. It will feel like we want to be here. We want to be a part of this. So it's, I can't imagine what the benefit is. I hear Zito, who's one of the assistant GMs, talking about we need to grow the game. They're going to talk about the American hockey team one time in this speech. They're going to show them on camera if they're indeed there and not just doing the luncheon thing. And then that'll be it. Not highlights, not whatever, just a bunch of hungover guys with bloated faces, bloodshot eyes, in suits that'll stand up and give a quick wave. And I guess that's how we're passing that off. That's how we're justifying that for these teams, is that helped grow the game. Sure. If that helps you, go ahead, believe that. But it's stupid. I did promise to keep the politics out of it the best I could. Kind of failed there, as you can see. It was only a matter of time. And it's just because of the timing. Any other president would have made the same phone call. Well, not the same phone call, but would have made a phone call and said, can't wait to celebrate with you in the White House. Would not have tried to pigeonhole it into this incredibly tight little window for political purposes. Most presidents are secure enough to not need that. This one is not. I've been sort of kicking around and I read a couple of tweets. I think I'm easily influenced, I guess. Sort of thinking about this edition of Team Canada and how that they outplayed Team USA in that gold medal game. And that you don't really have to sweat it. This is not one of those times that Hockey Canada should come back and have a big summit and reevaluate everything we do. That we played really well, had a really great game, got unlucky once or twice, certainly had a great goalie play the game of a lifetime against us. Don't sweat it too much. And that was my takeaway. And I think it still mostly is. But I have seen a couple people quite reasonably point out, almost lost to the Finns. That was not easy. And you were in 3-on-3 overtime in the quarters against the Czechs, and that was far from easy. I don't think this is a national emergency for Canadian hockey. But I do think it's reasonable when you look at the talent up and down the lineup to go, why aren't we creating any distance? Like if that happens once in one of those games, all three of them, the quarterfinal, the semifinal, and the final, come down to a play that was either in the last minute of the third period or overtime. So you're life and death in all three games. You won two of them and you lost one of them. The American one, I think everybody feels pretty comfortable, is reasonably close to on par, talent-wise. Certainly had the better goaltending. But you should be better than the Finns, and you should be better than the Czechs. And you know that when you play those teams, they are going to do everything they can to just drag you into the mud. You're sort of sitting there in a sports car and asked to take part in like a crash-up derby. But we know that. We've been doing international hockey for decades now. And we know what these teams that are less skilled are going to try to do. And instead of trying to widen the gap, we seem to want to get in the mud with them. And so, again, I don't have a huge problem with the Tom Wilson selection. He was on my team. I don't have a problem with the Bo Horvat or Nick Suzuki selections. They were on my team. But I do wonder if I sit back and go, even that was a little... Like, don't overthink it. Just fucking take Connor Bedard and have an extra gun, because you never know when you're going to need it. You don't need to take Parayko and Doughty and Sanheim. You can take Schaefer. I know that's a rookie conversation, an age conversation, whatever. Then take Bouchard. So that when Morrissey gets hurt, you have somebody else there. And this was always the fear. It was more the fear about Makar. If Makar gets hurt or Makar gets sick, do you have anybody who can properly move the puck? Well, let's just hope he doesn't. And he didn't. But Morrissey did, and he was your second most capable at that, and now you're stuck. You're not getting the puck to these high-end forwards well enough. So again, I'm putting these names on the table as ones that were justifiable to me. They made sense to me, and I don't think any single one of them was the reason Canada didn't manage to score a single goal in 3-on-3 during the gold medal game. Like, you were that close. So I don't think we need to be dramatic about it. But I do think it's worth revisiting that instead of, like, when you know everyone's going to try and drag you into the mud, maybe the key isn't to bring more Jeeps. It's to find a couple more sports cars that can kind of shoot through it and get around it, right? And just create so much speed and so much skill that it just doesn't matter. Like, it's still going to be hard, and you do need to still have a little of that element in your game. But maybe you just need to continue to widen the gap, because we're not widening on the scoreboard. It's always tight. There's always a game against Latvia, right? There's always a game against, people forget, Slovakia was a 1-goal win in the semifinal in 2010. That was a tight game. Sometimes maybe you just double down. I know all of these international GMs and the guys putting the game together. Yeah, you know what? It's not just like picking a fantasy team. You have to build a real team. Otherwise, why would you need me? You're like, yeah, exactly. Why would we need you? Maybe we always end up here because the two most talented teams keep dragging us back down here. Well, if we're going to end up playing the Americans and if they're going to end up playing Canada, we better have Brock Nelson. We better have Brad Marchand. What if you brought Jason Robertson and Connor Bedard? Oh. Now we're having a 4-3 overtime game, a 5-4 overtime game. Not just those two names, but you know what I'm driving at. The way both teams consciously build their rosters this way is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you build your team to play a low-scoring, tight as shit, drag through the mud slugfest, and both teams have done that, then that's obviously what you're going to get. How about you both build your teams around speed and talent, blow everybody away on the road to meeting each other, and then have a fucking shootout in the gold medal game. Not a shootout. You know what I mean. So, I don't know. It's been on my mind the last day or two. Again, I'm still mostly content with how that played out. I thought Canada played well enough. You obviously could have easily won the game. All the things we said on the Monday show. But, I do think it's worth at least examining the way we are putting these teams together and the people we're hiring to put them together. You see the team that won the Stanley Cup for Doug Armstrong. It's not hard to see what type of team he's going to try and build when he gets his hands on the national team. So, luckily, I can't imagine it'll be him again, but we'll see who they run out there next. Anyway, last thing on the Olympics, at least for now, is the idea of the medal count and our spending on it and some things like that. Some of you will have heard we tried to have a little bit of that conversation on the Monday show. It didn't go very well. I've gotten a couple of messages and whatever about that. Look, it is what it is. Sometimes a topic doesn't take off the way you want or it doesn't go the way you want. And at that point, look, you've heard this show go in a million different directions before. I'm hardly married to a roadmap. But you do have to recognize when a segment isn't going well, and isn't really making any sense, isn't contributing anything for the listener. And at that point, the best thing you can do usually is to just pull the plug, especially if you've already tried to reset once and it just wasn't clicking there on Monday. So I thought the best thing was to move along. So for anybody who was curious about that, that's all it was. But I think the thing I wanted to get to was to bring a little context to the conversation of where we have landed on the medal table again and how to view that, because we haven't finished out of the top 5 in the medal count since like 1992. And this time we finished 8th, but that's only part of the story, right? And we were projected to get 10 gold. We only get 5. But again, that's only part of the story. And when I talk about projections, this isn't just the COC, who certainly does it. There are other companies out there, certainly now in the age of gambling, that kind of tell you where they expect the value to be and which countries are projected to do what and do well. So it all it means something. When you're expected to get 27 overall medals and only get to 21, and when you're only getting to 5 gold when you're expected to get 10, and some of that is just sports, right? We saw, and we've seen in many Olympics, like you come down, you have the run of a lifetime, and maybe you just kind of miss on a turn. Or what was the one we saw in the first week of these Olympics that they literally finished in a tie, and so then it goes to a judgment on quality of your turn or something like that. Like the timing on one of these races was a tie, but there was something to do with one of the turns is how they break the tie. Like, I had no idea. And this is something that we have to keep in mind when we have these conversations. And we joke about it all the time during the Olympics, that at the beginning of the Olympics, I have no idea how any of these sports work. And by the end, I'm an expert just screaming at my TV that I know better than the judges or better than the commentators or whatever else. But there is a real element to that. We tune in for 2 weeks and we watch, and not all of us are assholes when we do. Sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't. I can only speak for personal experiences. But we weren't watching a week ago or a month ago or a year ago or 3 years ago, right? And so you do sort of jump in at the last minute, and we get mad when we don't perform the way we want. We get mad or disappointed when it doesn't go very well, and we turn around and say things like, that's a disappointing Olympics for Canada. But the context that goes into that in terms of what you're spending is important. Are most Canadians aware that we haven't upped our spend in amateur sport since before Vancouver 2010? Inflation is a thing. Like, when we watch the bobsledders go and it doesn't go the way we want, are most of us aware that the Canadian men were riding in a sled that they bought from the Germans because they were done with it? They had found a better sled, better tech, and something new. Well, yeah, fine. Take our old piece of crap. You guys can use it, and best of luck to you. Do we want to be that country? Or do we want to spend to be one of the top countries? Because honestly, that's how the Ottawa Senators shop for goaltenders. Hey, we got this all-time great Hasek. He's still fine. It's going to be great. You take him. All right. Oh. Yeah. Sorry about that. Here. We got this 2-time cup winner. He's only like 25. You're going to love him. His name's Matt Murray. Here, you take him. He's all the upside in the world. All right. Oh. Yeah, we don't want to be that country. And it's hard because we do turn around at the end of these games or while we're watching these things and go, man, Canada deserves better. You go, okay. Then you're going to have to spend more. And like, I do think it's reasonable to say this is a disappointing Olympics. Like, when you look at it, Canada got shut out on the medal table for alpine, for cross country, for slide sports. Just one medal coming from figure skating and snowboarding. Like, there were some things here that were supposed to go better. But we do have to keep in mind, lots of Canadians who didn't get on the podium achieved personal best. And how often do I bring this up? To the point where some of you get annoyed now when I do. But to have the mental strength to train for 4 years and go, yeah, I might have a World Cup race the week before and another World Cup race the week after and a World Championships later where no one else is watching. only the people who love my sport. The world is watching today for the Olympic Games. Can I bring my best of the whole season or of the whole 4 years right now, today? It has to be today. And if you get a personal best on that day, you have done that, whether it gets you on the podium or not. So I think we need to be careful when we frame this, but the medal count was disappointing. But again, further here, for context, isn't just, well, we normally win around 10 golds and normally win, 25 medals regularly. That doesn't account for the change in the number of events. How many different times have we watched the Olympics over the last couple of decades and go, holy fuck, look at some of this snowboard stuff or half pipe stuff that's all new. And every Olympics, it seems like there's another one. Today we're going to send down, or this year we're going to send down 2 at a time. And they're going to have to be like synchronized swimming about it when they go over the jumps or shit like that. The stuff they're still adding to speed skating to make it more team relays and mixed relays. We got the mixed curling now. Like, all of these things are fun, but they're not taking out anywhere near as many events as they're adding. We saw that mountaineering crazy when we had to like walk up this hill on cross-country skis and then down the other side. Like, there's so much of this stuff that they keep adding. And so for you to hold steady and go, well, this was a little bit of a fall off of our normal isn't really relevant when there's so many new events out there. If you always get like I said, let's just say for average, Canada always gets 25 medals and you're still getting 25 medals, but there's twice as many events. That's not good. That's not you keeping up. So I think it's time that some of these conversations need to be had. What's important to us as a sporting nation? What isn't? If we just like to watch the Olympics on TV and feel good about ourselves, but don't want to spend any money on it, it's not going to work. We can still watch the other countries. We can watch the Norwegians and the Germans and whatever else pull off this crazy shit. But we can't really expect our people to be on that level if we're not willing to invest in it. And so we have to have a bit of a conversation. And I think that's where Rob and I were getting tripped up the other day, is he was jumping right to that conversation, and I wanted to kind of break down what had happened during these Olympics and why it is alarming and why we have never seen COC executives sit there at the very end of a games and say, we are in trouble. The Canadian Olympic Committee saying, look, this is alarming. They always, it's the end of the games. Everyone's had, hopefully a good experience. Even if you've had your heart broken in your event, it's still a once in a lifetime thing to represent your country at the Olympics. They don't want to put a negative light on it at the very end as everyone's going home and, enjoying the closing ceremony. They sit up there and say, what a great experience this was and how great the village was and everything. This time, they had to say something, and they did. Now, I don't think the answer can just be go back to the government and ask for another $100 million, even though we haven't upped our spend significantly in well over a decade. I think that can be part of it. When I say we have to have a conversation about what's important to us, I don't think that just means, are you okay with your tax money going for more amateur sport funding? Because I think it's a reasonable debate. Some people might not be. Some people will say it's important. Some people won't. Like, these are reasonable discussions. But there are other ways to do it. So many other countries have massive corporate backing that their money comes from that way. Local, grocery chains, sports drinks, different things like that. And where it gets difficult is you're not really allowed to wear that stuff, like the merch stuff, in the Olympic Village, certainly on camera during your competition. Like, let's say you're Matt from Ottawa and you're sponsored by the Whippersnapper Brewery. You don't really get to show up at the Olympics and wear the Whippersnapper hat. Whippersnapper has to just do that for you out of national pride and say, we donated some money for you to be able to train or to get the piece of equipment you need. And yeah, there will be other places where we would like you to do some public speaking for us, or we would like you to wear our logo at an event that isn't the Olympics where it's a little less strict about it. But you can't get the big payoff of having an athlete wear your gear down the Olympic slope. So you're asking these companies to do it for national pride and to do it for charitable reasons. That's a tougher sell, especially in North America. The U.S. has a lot more money, and frankly, the U.S. has a lot of their companies in this country and are far less interested in doing it for the good of Canada, right? It's really tough. But that's the type of stuff we're going to have to get into here as we move forward, and this becomes a bigger conversation in terms of how we want to proceed as a sporting nation. Maybe it's, there are lotteries out there. There's one right now called Quest for Gold. And when you go into your convenience store and all those different lottery options are sitting there, if you grab a Quest for Gold, there's a certain percentage of that money that goes towards Ontario-based amateur athletes across the spectrum. Winter sports, summer sports, Olympic, Paralympic, men's, women's. It gets dumped into all of these different sports. Is that something that we as a nation would like to expand on, be more aware of? If I'm buying a lottery ticket anyway, yeah, let me give it to this one. Like, there are different ways of approaching it, but I think a lot of people are unaware. And so I think it's hard in the aftermath of an Olympics to sit there and say that was a disappointing games without it sounding like you're dumping on the athletes. Once you acknowledge that we sent our bobsled team down the hill in what another country had already deemed to be outdated technology, but it was the best we could get, that tells you where you're at right now. And it's not the athlete's fault. They're doing their best. So I think it's just a more nuanced conversation about, okay, as a nation, it's okay to say what we've landed on the medal table was disappointing. Doesn't mean the athletes themselves were a disappointment. Look, some were. Some went and had a bad games. That's life as an athlete. I didn't get it done today. How many times have you heard your favorite NHLer or major leaguer say that? It happens. So some people didn't have the performance that they wanted. Some people had great performances and just got beat by an even better one from someone else. And some we as a nation did not set up to succeed. These are all reasonable things to say. But before you go and just start throwing money at the problem, you have to figure out what it is, and you have to figure out if you care. If you don't think it's worth spending extra money as a taxpayer or as a corporate citizen of Canada at sports, then you can't be one of the people yapping every 4 years that it didn't go very well for Canada. We have to understand that will just be the end of us at that level in sports. The Canadian government could do more, could fund it more. But there are lots of countries that do this with far less dependence on the government and on the taxpayer, and more on fundraising and things like that. So it's an interesting debate. And yeah, these games had some great moments and some great stories. But if we're looking here in another 10 or 20 years, still at averaging around 25 medals, and they've added another 15 sports, it's not okay. Like, it doesn't mean the same thing it did 15 years ago when we were hosting in Vancouver. I guess that was 16 years ago. As in everything, context is king, right? We'll wrap it up here. We will be back later in the week to talk to Dave Bedini, hockey historian, and obviously of the Rio Statics. Might listen to a little bit and get myself psyched up for that conversation. It's been a little while. That'll be fun. Hope you'll join me for that. Until then, my name is Matt Robinson. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
That's it. I cannot work under these conditions. If anybody wants me, I'll be downstairs at McDougal's. Call the weekend guy. I don't care.